Evening, morning, whatever you are, and it has been miserable here today, by the way. The wind, the rain, I don't know what it's like where you are, but it's been horrible here. In the Steel City, absolutely fell. It's still fell now, it's just been over. Had to rescue one of our lasses' trees this morning, which had blown down the road. Horrible. An unhorrible day made worse by the fact that Wednesdays took an absolute drubbing at home. And then some sad news this evening that our former chairman, Milan Mandaric, has sadly passed away. So, all in all, a pretty miserable day. I'm probably not going to do my usual match report today because who wants to talk about an absolute drubbing? You know, I've got considerable notes here that I've made, but reading through them's quite depressing on its own. So I'll probably do a skim report. Wednesday, no changes to starting lineup, but essentially what changes can Henrik Pedersen make? You know, essentially we're going through this season, realistically, you know, we have got numbers on the bench, but realistically we've got 13, 14 first team pros on the book, so there's not many changes that he can make apart from maybe switching things around up front. The midfield three are going to have to just plough through it. Similar with the defence, and we're only one injury suspension away from looking very, very threadbare. Now, as I've said, we're not expecting a result today by any means, and we knew this season that there were going to be times when we're going to paste it, and that's happened today, and it's going to happen. That is going to happen this season, and we've, you know, we like to look at things positively and whatever, but we've got to get our head around that. There will be some pastings. We've got to be realistic about it. So to that end, it weren't as crushing as a 5-0 should have been mentally for me, because I know that through the season these results are going to happen. On our day, as we proved against Birmingham and QPR, Portsmouth, on our day, our best 11 can go out and get results in this division, but it's going to be incredibly tough and there will be some hammerings on way. I'll quickly talk about the game. Coventry come out flying. They come out flying, they got a corner after, 20 seconds of the game, and they just kept applying that pressure, really sort of caught us cold, kicking towards Cop. The first goal when it come 3 minutes, disappointing because Wednesday's had a couple of opportunities to clear it. You know, I think there was like a header, a misdirected header, and then a bit of a slice, and that gets tucked home. And then, daft as this might sound, after that initial onslaught and them going 1-0 up, I thought Wednesday did okay. I did. I thought we eased our way into the game a little bit, just with some simple passing, just to get everybody comfortable and work your way in by not doing anything daft, you know, just making sure you make your 5 and 10 yard passes and just build yourself into the game, and I thought we did that. They always looked a threat though. They've got unbelievable pace. Obviously they've got Clark, Wright, with the Japanese lad on the right, Sakamoto, something like that. And obviously Asante up front, lightning quick, so they'd always got that pace, and they looked a genuine threat with that. But like I said, I thought Wednesday worked their way back into the game, and about, you know, I would say 20 minutes in, I thought to myself, yeah, okay, we're 1-0 down against a good side, but it's a good game of championship football. I thought, you know, I thought it was a decent match, and then it's them little bits of quality, and what Coventry had today, and there's no point, you know, probably going into it in too much detail, but what they had, you could see the confidence they had because they were doing things that you only really do when everyone's full of beans. So, just give you an example. There was, I'm trying to think how far into the game it was, but there was a moment when when Svante Ingelsson intercepted the ball near halfway line and he drove on into their half. They'd been on attack, so they were all quite spread, ready to get at us. Good interception, drives on, not quite got the pace to get away from their lad, so he's then looking, can I get somebody else in? And like I said, it was a good break on counter-attack. By the time he'd got support, they'd got 5 men back in their 18-yard box. from an attacking position. They suddenly got 5 men back. They'd all funneled back into their box. And that comes with confidence, because when you're playing well and you're full of beans, it becomes a natural instinct to get up and get down. And a great break for Wednesday, and they got 5 men in there defending their 18-yard box. Equally, I'm just going to fast forward a little bit here, but Spelling second half, when they were 4-0 up by this stage, Wednesday had an attack. It broke down, then it got worked back out to left-hand side. Barry Bannon put a cross into their box. I don't know, maybe 70-odd minutes or whatever it was. They're 4-0 up anyway. He put a cross into their box. 11 Coventry players. Every single one of their players had got back into their 18-yard box to defend it. And they got a 4-0 lead. Clean sheets. You get... When you're full of beans like that and you're playing well, you little targets, you say, so right lads, we're not conceding. We might be 4, but we're not conceding. And they got that. They got the look of a side who were absolutely full and brimming with confidence. You know, and when you're up against that with a threadbare squad as Wednesday's got, playing the number of games that we've had to play, you know, I'd seen in pre-match that Lampard was on about, you know, squad depth and having to rest players and this sort of, and I look at us, and that Henrik Pedersen has got no choice about who he's picking it. His first 11 essentially is picking itself, you know. And those lads, including the 110 minutes at Birmingham, where they absolutely worked their socks off, they looked drained, and into the second half, we looked a very, very tired side. 10 minutes in, protest, the chants go up, and some Wednesday fans get onto the pitch, which had been motored on social media that it was going to happen, and this and that. It was hard to see exactly how many there were. You know, some people said an handful. It looked like maybe 40 or 50 to me. It was hard to tell, because the absolute crowd scene of stewards that were on the pitch, and I don't think I can remember the last time I've seen that many stewards on pitch. Now, I'm presuming that Wednesday stewards, like the rest of the staff, have possibly had half or not full payments if they've been paid at all for this month. So to see those extras in, which I've since been told were brought in from an external firm, who's paid for that? Club skin, staff aren't being paid, players aren't being paid. Where's all extra policing and stewarding come from? Where's that money come from? So that's one point that's stuck in my mind. The chants go up, get out of our club, and then there's a chorus of boos, which some people are saying, oh, you shouldn't be booing them lads who were on pitch protesting. Well, it weren't that what it be. I think they were booing the heavy-handed stewarding who were, you know, wrestling fans off at pitch. And the one bit that got to me is when I was looking at it, and I don't know how it's got to me, but it has. There were 2 quite old boys on there. And usually stuff like that, you expect it's the younger end, you know, and kids, and I think the average age was pretty young, but I've seen 2 old fellas on there because it means that much to them that they're willing to risk a ban, and make no bones about it, I've got no doubt that he will have them banned. I mean, I think it's par for the course anyway, but if it were down to a choice, I'm sure he'd push for it. And that really got to me, that it's got to that stage where people who might have been going for 30, 40, 50 years are prepared to be getting on pitch and risking a ban. And I say fair play to him, you know. But it upset me. It upset me that we're in that place now where that's something that people are prepared to do. I can't fault him. I know. Because I've got a decent following on here, and I'm probably meant to say I can't condone this and all that, but I do. I actually do condone, and well done on him for making the point and getting a stoppage in the game, especially when it were, you know, being beamed live around the world. 5 or 6 minutes stoppage for that, which did make me laugh actually, because it took me back to the Birmingham game, because I then thought to myself, you know, I've had a pitch invasion here, there's people on pitch, there's stewards on pitch, it's all going off, and still not as much injury time as there was at St Andrews on midweek. Bizarre, don't you think? Just before the break, obviously the third goal, the death knell. Were Wednesday going to come back into the game? Probably not. But whenever it's 2-0, you've got a chance, because whenever you've got the opportunity to bring it back to a one goal deficit, you've got a chance. You can rock the opposition no matter how good they've been. That's out at window with third goal, which comes from a sort of breakdown on right hand side. It comes to the lad on wrong foot, and he puts in swinging in. It's headed back in. I mean, it's take your pick. I mean, all three of them were offside that it got headed down to. Take your pick, and obviously the one who prods it home is the one that flag goes up for, as a rule. You'll never see a more blatant offside this season. And obviously Wednesday, players protesting about it. And referee actually comes over and has a word with linesman. I think he's got an half an eye on himself, thinking, you know, they probably did look off. What Liner said to him, I've got no idea. But he stuck with his decision. I do not know how. Ego, I don't know. Terrible decision, 3-0, and that's game over. I mean, it were probably over at 2, but it's definitely over at 3. Second half, obviously, game's over, but you've still got to sort of go through motions, haven't you? Wednesday had a breakdown left-hand side just after break, actually. Lowe escaped from his man, good footwork. I've said this before, I think Lowe's better playing off at left. He drifted out there from a centre-forward position, but did well beat his man. 5 Coventry defenders in there again, and only Cadamarci. And I understand that you don't want to get picked off. Coventry, unbelievable pace. Like I said, 4 or 5 players across their front line that will cause problems for any team in this division, so you don't want to get caught on counter. You don't want to get too many men caught forward, sort of in front of ball if it breaks down, but 1 man in box against 5 defenders, cross comes in and lad ain't got a chance, you know. Which sort of probably summed up the game, in all honesty. I mean, it could have been, it's 5-0, it could have been a lot more. I think, you know, the lad Asante's been on an hat-trick since, 30 minutes into the first half, and 1 or 2 times I think where he's took a shot on when he could have laid it on for somebody else and probably a tap-in. But there's always that little bit of greed element comes in, isn't there, when you're on a hat-trick. The third goal well worked, fourth, so they pinged out to right hand side, headed on. Lad holds it up for lad who's one initial header, he gets an overlap, it's drilled in, Sims taps it home, and it disappointing. And the last goal, pinged in, free kick. I'm not sure it's not young Ernie Weaver who sort of maybe tries to take it down instead of smashes it. I'm not going to criticise that lad because he's coming in being absolutely magnificent this season in his first senior year for the club. So I'm not going to pop it in, but it's just one of them things. Dribbles out to their lad who absolutely smashes it on, terrific finish, and it's dead and buried. And the last sort of 20 minutes or so, they're just playing it about. They've made 4 or 5 subs or whatever it is, and like Lampard was saying before the game, that opportunity to rest people, and not really something that Wednesday are in a position to do. And it's the last 15 minutes or so were absolute purgatory, watching it, and you sat there with not even a heavy heart because, as I said, it's expected. We know that this season there is going to be some absolute hammerings, and we've had one today. We've got an international break coming up now. And obviously, you don't want to go into that international break with a bad result in the back of your mind. But equally, I think it's coming at the right time for us because these lads have worked their absolute socks off. For the younger ones especially, it'll be a real step up in terms of fitness and having to push themselves to limits that you just simply don't have to get to in under 23 football. You know, it's a completely different pace of game. So it'll be a well-earned break for them. And equally for older lads, you know, Barry Bannon has been superb this season. He's been probably our best box-to-box player, amazingly, at 35 years old, you know, and for him and Palmer and people who's had injury worries, you know, last season, Lowe and Iorford had got their own injury problems, and it's, you know, they're suddenly coming in playing 2 or 3 times a week. It's hard, so they're going to need that rest. Like I said, you don't want to go in on back of a defeat, but I think it's come at the right time for them, because they have put in 100% this last month or so, and they actually deserve and need a breather. In terms of on pitch, what do you do from here? I think it's very difficult position that Henrik's in. Obviously he's got a threadbare squad, the players are giving it their all. We've picked up the best results on the road, and I think that's because we can sit off a bit and play on counter-attack. When you're at home, there's a pressure to, I don't want to say a pressure to entertain, it sounds like Roman Empire, but there is a, you know, onus on you to go out and have the lion's share at ball. But you can get picked off when you do that, and I think the playing away from home suits us because we can be compact with that 5 at back and frustrate opposition teams. If you do that at home, it can be a library in there, and I think you would start, despite the fact I know we need to back the lads this season, I think you would start hearing the groans. But to have any chance, I think that's something that we'll have to do at some stage, and I'd welcome it, and I think it's something Henrik might have to look at. But I'm saying that as if it gives us a realistic chance of staying up. The odds are massively, massively stacked against us. So I think today's just highlighted what we've known, that it's going to be an incredibly tough season with 1 or 2 pastings along the way. And we've just got to try and back them lads as much as we can, whilst at the same time making it clear that the way the club's been running to the floor is an absolute disgrace, and we really need change to come in some form or other. And speaking of club and the way it's run, we'll finish off with the sad news about Milan Mandaric, who obviously our chairman was over a decade ago now, who bought us when we were facing it in the wall, and came in and bought Wednesday for £1. There's different attitudes towards Milan Mandaric. Some people say he was an absolute saviour. Some people say, well, he was just a shrewd businessman. But the truth is, you know, the world's not black and white. It was both of those things. You know, life isn't black and white. Life is the grey shades in between. And that was Milan Mandaric. He was a shrewd businessman. He came in, he bought Wednesday for £1, sold him for £37 million. Shrewd businessman. But equally, he did take us over at a time when we were at that time, lowest ebb. I think that's since been surpassed. And he came in and he stabilised the ship. What Milan Mandaric wasn't afraid to do was to put people in positions and let them get on with their jobs. He was also approachable, and he would communicate with people. So one of the first things he came in and he negotiated with a bank, and I think we ended up paying back, I think, an agreement where we paid back £7 million of the 20 odd million that we owed. He came to an agreement with him. I think he came to an agreement with the rest of the directors to pay them some money off, to get out at road. And that, you know, communication. He came in and communicated with people. The people who worked in the club on a day-to-day basis, I've never heard a bad word said about the man. Highly approachable, as I said. Brilliant in terms of PR, and he got that bit of a twinkle in his eye. And he was a businessman, and he did make a profit off Wednesday. But while he was here, he made us sustainable. He kept us bobbing along, and he tried to back managers where he could. We didn't have a lot of money, but he tried to back them where he could. There were key loan signings. I think about the Mind the Gap season in 2012. You know, players on loan like Marshall, and then Antonio, becoming a loan and then a permanent deal. You know, so he did back managers where he could, and sold players at a profit where possible as well. You know, basic business. So I look back quite fondly on Mandaric's time at the club, to be honest with you. Like I said, always got that bit of a twinkling eye. Connected with supporters, I think that was one of the key things with him. I think he understood football supporters. He was obviously a big football man himself, obviously enjoyed the game, and I think that showed through. A bit of maybe a lovable rogue would be the best way to describe him. I'll tell you what one of my main memories is though, and it reminded me of it the other day when obviously he came back on the scene to come in and have a word with our current owner and see if he might listen to a bit of advice, which of course he wouldn't. And he spoke to Radio Sheffield, and it reminded me about when they used to speak to him before, and that the underwater phone, that was the joke. Obviously he got quite a thick accent, and with a phone signal and everything else. Is he underwater? But yeah, condolences to Milan's family, and I thank you for giving us one of the best seasons that we've actually had. I mean, last, I would say 40 years, to be perfectly honest with you. That mind the gap season, for a younger generation than me, that will probably be the best season they've ever had. Rest in peace to Milan Mandaric, and thanks for everything you did when you did come to Sheffield Wednesday.